Welcome to Human at the Helm, the show where we explore what it really takes to navigate marketing in an AI driven world. I'm your host, Veronica Markol, and every episode I sit down with agency leaders, CMOs, and innovators who are figuring out how to keep humans at the center while embracing the tools of the future. Today, we're joined by Amy Jackson, a brand and PR powerhouse who has shaped narratives for some of the most transformative moments in tech and business. From helping potato farmers navigate the low-carb diet revolution to securing major media coverage for tech acquisitions like Bebo and Mint.com, Amy has a unique talent for turning challenging situations into compelling stories. During her 8-year tenure with SAP Concur, she built Tripit's PR and social program from the ground up and led brand experiences across their entire travel portfolio. Her work has landed coverage in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg Business Week, and NBC, among others. Beyond her corporate successes, Amy is passionate about volunteering with the American Heart Association's Go Red for Women leadership team in Austin and empowering working moms and female founders across the country. Currently based in the Austin Hill Country, Amy brings over 2 decades of experience in helping brands navigate periods of rapid change while staying authentic to their core message. We're excited to dive into her insights on effective brand storytelling and PR strategy in today's fast-moving business landscape. Amy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun.
So you have a fascinating portfolio, and I'm really curious, how did you tell me more about the journey in founding Tailsplash and what inspired you to create a family-friendly PR agency? Because when I started in the ad business, Ad Age actually ran an article that said women don't belong in the ad business.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's the blatant messages like that. And then there's the challenges that you face as a parent, right? And so I had a long career in PR, working in agencies, working in corporate. And like so many people during the pandemic, I had a lot of time to soul search and kind of observe what was happening with the news. I found personally that listening to real time news updates during the pandemic was really helpful. And I just thought, what an interesting time to build a PR agency from scratch. And I had had experiences previously with Tripit building PR programs from scratch. But really, I thought, what if I could create an agency that was really geared towards helping founders tell their story? Because I had been a fan of podcasts like How I Built This and, publications that really told the story of how companies came to be that I personally thought was so interesting. So that was the genesis of Tailsplash. What I found in building it is that I could really work around my family's needs and design an agency that helped other women on the team also accommodate their families with their career. And so that's really been important to me as I built the company.
The ad and marketing and PR world do have a reputation of being a little bit off balance when it comes to work family balance.
Mhm.
And so I'm really inspired by that. But I'm also curious because you have developed a specialty on health and safety brands with a family focus. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about your intentionality around that.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I have always liked working with brands that are solving a problem, and it could be something that's a personal challenge for families in particular. There are so many interesting problems that women's health startups are addressing related to everything from infertility to menopause and all of the lifelong health challenges that we have as women. And in my work with the American Heart Association, I really got inspired to lean into women's health more as an agency. And along the way, we have helped a variety of companies in different aspects of technology and even consumer products. But really, where our passions lie are in the things that personally impact us, that we can relate to, that we can use ourselves. And so those are the kinds of companies that we're really well suited for. And so it can be everything from like skincare to looking at heart health or menopause or infertility. We want to work with companies like that that can really benefit from the validation that comes from journalists that are really giving you their stamp of approval and helping you reach more consumers, reach partners, reach investors, whatever you're looking for to grow your business.
You know, as a marketer, I always try to be platform agnostic and recognize that everyone has their own voice and how you speak to people is very different. And I always try to understand the target audience. And what I really appreciate is you're talking about actually understanding it from a firsthand perspective. And that's a really unique perspective. And I think that's a really great differentiator for Tailsplash is that you are the target audience for a lot of the products that you're talking about. So that said, I'm wondering again now, AI is everywhere. And the thing is, it's been around for a long time, but it seems like all of a sudden it's kind of at this tipping point. And
Mhm.
so I'm wondering if you can talk about how AI has transformed your approach to media relations, and particularly with tools like Quoted.
Yeah, really almost 5 years ago when I started the company, there were tools in place that were leveraging AI already, and Quoted is one of those. And I loved how it was a much better experience than previous marketplaces out there that tried to like put a newsletter out 3 times a day and have you comb through all these requests from journalists. And by the time you saw it and you responded, you had no idea how many other PR professionals had reached out, or you didn't know if they already had enough responses and were not going to read your pitch. You just had no visibility. And so tools like Quoted were actually available when I started the company. And look how far we've come. I mean, now the same kind of matchmaking is happening with podcasts. So there's a great tool called Pod Pitch that we're big fans of too. So it's the same idea of helping journalists or podcast producers and PR teams find each other when there's a need, when there's a story in the works, when there's an topic that a podcast wants to cover. It's doing the job of matching you up, but that's where it stops. AI is not going to show up on a podcast and do the interview. I mean, that we've certainly seen those happen, but that's not the norm. AI is not going to write the responses that an expert is going to need to provide to a journalist. That's not allowed. And so there's limitations, but the actual matchmaking is really AI powered in a good way. And then the rest is up to the human beings involved and the expertise of those sources that journalists need for the stories they're writing or the podcasts that they're producing.
So it's fascinating to me. This is a relatively new endeavor for me, but I've already had probably 15 interviews. And without exception, everyone has talked about how important the human part of the human AI collaboration is. And so far, it hasn't really mattered the industry or the execution of the AI. It really is about making sure that there's an intelligent being that's paying attention.
Yeah.
That said, you brought up matchmaking. So
Mhm.
I'm wondering, do you have a specific example of how AI has improved your matchmaking between journalists and clients?
Yeah, it actually happens almost every day of the week. So when my team and I wake up in the morning, we have lots of emails in our inbox from those matches saying, your client might be a fit for this story. Do you want to pitch this client? And so it's literally happening every day. We have one stylist that we work with in particular where Real Simple is always looking for like fashion and style tips. And so we're always getting those emails where she's being matched up and it's saying, do you want to pitch this Real Simple request? So it's happening all the time. But where I think the magic happens really is on the podcast side because there's so many podcasts out there. How do you find the ones that are a fit for whatever your message is? And that's where we see really great work being done with AI to help you find your fit in the world of podcasts because there's just so many out there.
I remember the first time blogs came out, right? And there was a statistic that there was being a blog created every second. It is gonna be difficult to cut through the noise. However,
Right.
so far I've had brilliant guests, so I think I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
I guess in in your experience, where do you draw the line between AI assistance and human expertise in PR? And not only that, but when you are serving your clients, how transparent are you about where that line is and what the collaboration is?
So it's really interesting. Everybody has a different tolerance for AI, and we have clients that have actually really pushed us to adopt AI as much as possible because they see the efficiencies themselves. So they're, really encouraging us to embrace it even more than we already do. The thing is, we are limited in content creation. So a lot of people are using AI to write LinkedIn posts, as we are seeing right now, or emails. We can't do that for media requests. So journalists are not allowed to use AI generated responses in their stories. They're not allowed to use AI to write their stories. So there are limitations, and that's where we really have to make sure that the thoughts or the tips or the expertise that we're providing to journalists is original. It's coming from the human that is the source. And so there are some limitations to what we can use AI for. And I think where there's opportunity is something that's always been a challenge in the world of PR, which is around reporting and impact. How do you measure the impact of PR? Because so much of it is trying to get the attention of journalists, trying to get the attention of podcast producers. And that isn't something that's necessarily going to show up as a metric that you can measure. But what we are seeing is a shift. So for a long time, people would associate some SEO value with PR. You know, if you got featured in an article, you would rank higher in Google searches, for example. Now AI is replacing that with LLMs, pulling in podcasts, pulling in articles, and using that to surface recommendations when people make a search. So it is something that we're starting to see as correlating with value around PR efforts, which I think is headed in the right direction because for the 20 years, 20 plus years that I've been in the industry, measurement has been very manual and it's not something that you can always track, right? If somebody read about you and then came to your site or downloaded your app or purchased your product, you don't always have that clear attribution. So being able to show that LLMs are pulling in these moments of third party validation that PR brings is going to be really transformational for the industry.
It's interesting because when you're talking about measuring PR and the value of PR, I think a huge part of that is demand generation and brand awareness, right? Like that's a
Mhm.
huge, huge part. What's interesting to me is I do remember the first time I created a payoff report, like, and it was like, oh my God, right? Like you're actually going to track these things. And it was hard because you had to rely on people asking, where did you hear about us? And one
Mhm.
of the most interesting things for me is we had stopped television advertising. And yet the number one response that year was television, right? For how you heard about us. But I think what's interesting is that since the advent of digital marketing, more and more people think that everything is like you can follow that stream and you can make this direct correlation and you can show the direct return on investment. And yet, with brand building, with PR, with demand generation, so much of it is about brand recognition, which is hard to actually measure. But the thing that I love is it is one of the things that influences your ability to change price more than anything
Mhm.
else.
Yeah,
And I like to remind people of that because it's a long-term investment and
absolutely.
you can't always attach a dollar return to it, but it is invaluable. And we all experience that on a day-to-day basis in our lives. Your brand is very precious. So speaking of your brand, one of the other things that I find really attractive about Tailsplash is that your agency is not only 100% women led, it is 100% women. So talk a little bit about how that happened and your plans for it and why it's important for you.
Yeah. So there is some data around, the number of women that work in the PR industry. Like it's definitely skews more female. However, I also think that building an agency that's fully remote, that's really modeled after what my needs are as the mother of young children, has helped attract other women that need that kind of flexibility. And I hear a lot of people like when I do share the meaning behind, building that kind of agency, I often hear from moms that have been through really difficult job situations where, they are, if you really put it out there that it matters to you to have true balance between work and your life outside of work, that will attract other parents because it's not always something that companies are really vocal about. And we're seeing that shift right now with so many companies going back to the office. It's really tricky for parents when you have school pickup and after school activities and all of this juggling to figure out with a commute and going into the office. So I think, the more vocal I've been, the more I've attracted other women that are looking for that kind of family friendly environment. And also, I just happen to bring women that I've previously worked with into the team. So I've had the pleasure of reconnecting with women that I had worked with years before we all had children. And then now we have kids and we're looking for that kind of flexible remote experience. But we have so many years in the world of PR to draw from. So it's a really great mix for clients that value that depth of expertise, but are not going to be wondering why we're not answering emails, at the hours that we're feeding our kids or putting them to bed.
So I think there are a lot of unique advantages of having team members who are personally connected to the products and the services. But I guess, one of the questions that I would ask, and this is a big one in the world of agency leadership and agency ownership, is balancing your client portfolio. So
Mhm.
it seems to me that you are not just very intentional about the structure of the organization you've built, but also in the clients that you seek. And I
Mhm.
wonder, for our listeners, can you talk to them about how do you manage your client portfolio? And have you found that AI helps with that at all?
Ooh, that would be a fun thing for AI to help with, actually. We haven't used AI yet, but I can say that it's just taken time to figure out who is a good fit for us and who is not a good fit for us. And as a first time business owner, I have had to learn that the hard way, that we're not for everyone and everyone's not for us. And so, as we've gotten clearer around what are the qualities of the clients that have been with us the longest, that truly see us as a partner, that are collaborative, that don't see this as a transactional situation where they want to see ROI on day one. Because, like you had mentioned, it's not possible with PR. PR is a long game. It's very much like playing golf. You really have to put the reps in, and some days are going to go better than others. A lot of it is out of our hands because it's up to the journalists to write when they want to, or when their editors are approving stories. And podcasts often have very long queues of guests that we have to wait for, so it's a lot of patience. But I would say just getting clear on where we're truly passionate for, the industries that we have experience, where we see the media really focusing. I mentioned women's health, a growth area that has really survived a lot of the trends and economic impact that have hit other industries. Women's health is not going away as something that matters to our population. Stats are pretty amazing around just the number of women that will go through menopause, for example, in the next decade. So it's a combination of really looking in the mirror at what are the qualities of a good partner for us and who are we a good fit for, looking at the industries where there's passion and experience across the team, and where there's opportunity to help companies that are growing and getting investment and really need a PR partner to help them get that third party validation.
So I've been doing this for a while, and one of the things that I have always said to my clients is that a good brand, one, should fit you like a bespoke suit, right? Like, it
Mhm,
should make you look great, but it should be so comfortable that you love wearing it because
mhm,
it's you.
mhm.
But the other thing is that a good brand is also a filter. It's not
Mhm.
just a net. It is
Good.
also a filter. And so one of the things, again, even as an agency owner, I have to say congratulations for being willing to acknowledge that and to actually make intentional decisions, recognizing that, yeah, this does mean that some people are going to self-select, and it does mean that sometimes we're going to say no because it's not in alignment with who we really are. So, tremendous amount of respect for that. And when you talk about, when I talk about, is there a way to leverage AI? I think there might be something in there, right? There, because there's definitely a predictive index of who's the right target audience. And so we know that that's one of the things AI is really good at, is
Yeah.
predicting.
Yeah, you're right. You can always plug in your target audience and your strategy into ChatGPT and see what kind of recommendations it has for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have done a great job of answering some of the questions that I didn't even get to ask, but I do have one that we didn't, it's kind of out of the left field, but I think it's important because, again, I've been doing this for a long time. And one of the things that I've always found difficult as a non PR professional is it's really hard to get PR if you don't have good relationships. And so we did talk a little bit about what the sweet spot is between human and AI. But when it comes to actually managing the relationships, so you can pitch a story, so you can get that story put out into the world. How do you manage that now?
So I think it comes back to the principles of what has always been important in business, which is following through when you say you're going to do something. That is like the number one way to build a good relationship with a journalist or a podcast producer, because a lot of the times they are going to come, if they're interested in working with you, they're going to come back to you with requests. They need this, they need that, they need this. One story can take 10 different, touch points of I need an image now, I need an interview, I need this, I need that. And so just making sure that you are delivering what they need in a timely way shows that they can trust you again and they will come back to you. And so that's what I think relationships are built on in the world of PR that will last. It's not about, are we buddies? Do we go to parties together? But it's really, is this a good place to get what I need for my story or my podcast interview? And are they going to bring somebody who's credible, who's a good expert for what I'm working on? Or are they going to bring me an interesting company that's doing something different, that's going to make my life easier, that's going to help me get more views and clicks and downloads? So I think it's really about that kind of brand reputation, right? So it's following through, doing what you say you're going to do is really what makes relationships tick in the world of PR.
And again, what I heard was AI is never going to be able to replace that. The things that you just talked about, AI is never going to be able to replace because it doesn't know how to make a good recommendation for who's going to be an interesting speaker for a specific anything. It can make some suggestions, but it doesn't understand how connection between humans happens.
Mhm.
So, last question, and that is, so you've been doing this for a while. Someone who's thinking about getting into public relations and again, knowing the impact that AI is having on that, what would be your advice for them?
So, really, the best way to start is with an internship. So, you don't have to have like the perfect degree that's, exactly in the realm of PR. But if you can get an internship, that is a great foot in the door. And it's a good way to test out, is this a good field for me? Because there's going to be a different experience, depending on if you're working at an agency or working on a corporate PR team. Industry by industry, it really varies. And so it's very fast paced. You do juggle a lot of things at one time. You do really need to be able to like keep track of lots of different moving parts, working with lots of different publications and journalists' names and stories and news cycles. It's a lot of information to carry. So it's good to try it just for your own benefit and also to figure out where in the industry you might like to start and be open to the possibility that you're going to change industries too. Because I started out in the world of food PR with the US Potato Board's example. And then I went into tech in Silicon Valley. And then I went into a corporate role with TripIt. And then I started my own agency. So being open to where things might take you with your career is also really helpful. And then within PR, there's now different like channels. You can look at influencers, you can look at social media, you can look at traditional media, you can look at podcasts as places where you might be particularly passionate. So there's room for all of those interests and more, and AI too. So I think just kind of being open to where things take you is always good advice.
That is always really good advice. So, Amy, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for sharing your insights. And before we wrap up, I just want to make sure that we have a way for listeners to get in touch with you or to learn more about Tailsplash, or if they're a woman-owned business who fits your target audience, how they can reach out to you for some help.
Yeah, I'm always available on LinkedIn or our website, tailsplash.com. We're also on Instagram. And we love just connecting and learning about different goals that businesses have and to see if there's a fit for PR to help them reach those goals.
Fantastic. So I'm going to make sure to drop those links in the show notes. So they'll be there so people don't have to worry about writing anything down. And to our listeners, thanks so much for joining us on Human at the Helm. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe. Thanks.
Thank you.